speaking of bread and butter issues and material concerns, let's put this up on the screen. This is insane. A bunch of Wells Fargo banking customers went to pay their bills, check their banking accounts, etc., pay their rent, and found out their deposits were gone because of a, quote, technical issue. Let me read you the opening of this piece. They say that those deposits had disappeared, causing the customers to express concern over where their money had gone, and in some cases to report being late on their bills. Wells Fargo said it was a technical issue and that it has been resolved. By the way, this isn't even the first time this has happened at Wells Fargo, which you all probably know. Wells Fargo has a very checkered recent past of all kinds of fraud that they have been, they have gotten into all kinds of legal trouble for, creating all these fake accounts, which, by the way, they were caught doing again just recently, even though they said they turned over a new leaf and changed their ways, et cetera. But a similar glitch that resulted in deposits being erased or being reported incorrectly happened for customers back in March. NBC News put this up on the screen. They did some additional reporting on this. They talked to some of the customers. They actually found a guy that this happened to in both instances. It happened to him in March, and then it happened to him again now, and understandably, he's like, all right, I think I'm done with this bank. They also spoke with a woman, Jeannie Cortez, single, disabled, self-employed accountant and Alaska resident. She was supposed to have paid her rent, gas, electric, and internet payments for the month by now with funds that she deposited Wednesday. She was told Friday by a Wells Fargo rep that she would not be able to access her deposit for another 3 to 5 business days. She'd earlier been told Wells Fargo could send her a letter to give to her creditors. That, too, has not arrived. She said, quote, there is simply not enough funds without that deposit to cover them all, talking about her bills. I simply cannot live without my funds now. So this bank screws up, deletes these deposits, glitch, whatever happened, technical issue that, again, had already happened to them previously just a few months prior in March. This happens again, and people were just absolutely screwed by this. I mean, and it screws up your credit. It makes it, and once it's just, it can be a total cascading effect. The late fees that get piled up for, potentially like getting kicked out of your apartment, et cetera. So people put in a very bad position because of this.
Yeah, I just don't understand how this is really even possible. And remember, we shouldn't forget, Wells Fargo was fined $3.7 billion for consumer banking violations less than a year ago. And it was very similar, Krystal, in terms of they did not record payments on their home and their auto loans, and in some cases, quote, wrongfully repossessed some borrowers' cars and homes and then charged overdraft fees, even when customers had enough money to cover purchases that they had made with their bank cards. Wells Fargo had stopped this conduct this year as a part of a larger effort to clean up other unlawful practices stretching back to 2011. So they have now paid 2 record fines on a consumer banking institution. The $3.7 billion was a record after a previous $1 billion, which they had also been forced to pay before that. So this is totally crazy. And at this point now, this is the overall statistics, $6.2 billion have been fined for banks for mistreating customers and investors. Who wants to bet that those fines pale in comparison to the overall profit that all said banks have made in the since the 2008 financial crisis? $6.2 billion is like a paltry day on Wall Street for some of these folks.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy. Like they always get away with it.
Yeah. Wells Fargo is like the worst repeat offender here, because even after they claimed like, oh yeah, we fixed all the like superfluous fake accounts that they pressured their sales associates to setting up, they're like, oh, we fixed that all, that they had to be again fined by the government a pretty significant amount because it turned out they had lied about just how much work they had done to clean up the problem. So they are a complete mess. At the same time, this was pretty wild. Go ahead and put D3 up on the screen. So this ties back to the conversations we were having around Silicon Valley Bank and the bank bailouts that happened at that time. And one of the theories was like, if the government is making it clear that even these mid-sized institutions are too big to fail, you know who's going to get screwed are the little guys. Why would anyone keep their deposits at small banks when you have the government, out and out making it clear that they're going to backstop the deposits at the big guys? So the theory based on that landscape that was really created, with the bailouts and even prior to the bailouts was, okay, the big guys are going to get even bigger. They're going to consolidate even more of the nation's deposits. That actually turned out not to be true, and for a very interesting reason. So actually, deposits at the big banks have gone down. Some of the biggest deposit declines during the second quarter were not those mid-sized regional lenders that everybody was worried about. They were the industry's giants: JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, Citigroup, Wells Fargo. The four biggest banks by assets gave up a net $262 billion in deposits when compared with the year earlier period. Now, it is no surprise that even without the issues that were happening at banks, that deposits would be going down right now. Why? Because you had the Federal Reserve hike interest rates, and so there are sort of better opportunities to move your money out of a savings account and earn higher interest somewhere else. So it's not a surprise that deposits are being pulled out. What is a surprise is that they are coming overwhelmingly from the biggest players. The reason for that is that the smaller players realized they're going to have to compete by offering higher interest rates on their savings accounts. And so they have upped the amount of interest that customers who, put their money in a savings account in those banks, those smaller banks have upped the interest that those accounts are earning. And because of that, they have actually, in some instances, increased their deposits over this period. So it's surprising how it's the total opposite of what everyone had predicted. Now, the big guys, don't worry, are doing just fine. Part of why they haven't upped their interest rates to try to compete as well is because they're making so much money in so many other ways that they just feel like it's not even worth it and they don't even need it. But it's just an interesting result and the opposite of what was being predicted.
It was the opposite, but I mean, we can't say that one of the reasons why it had happened is it actually spurred some level of competition. So it actually means that the aggregate amount of profit that some of these banks is going to go down. But I mean, hey, it's better for the consumer, which I think is overall a good thing. It is interesting. I actually personally, had this experience. Like most people, you want to try and have some savings in terms of an emergency fund and all of that. And I remember looking, at one of these large banks, and they didn't even offer like a higher interest savings account. So you start Googling around, and I came across all of these banks which are paying like 5 or 6% interest. Banks I'd never even heard of, and I was like, well, that's interesting. Okay, you start to read a little about it. You're like, okay, FDIC insured. All right, maybe you could take a chance on that. So like on a personal level, I actually kind of went through this, and it does make sense, which is that's how these banks are able to make a name for themselves. And also, frankly, in an era where the Federal Reserve is paying like 4.5% on T-bills, there's no reason that these banks don't have the capacity to do it, because they can literally just take your money and invest it in treasuries and then pay you back in the same interest and still make a modest profit.
Correct.
So there's no reason for the big banks not to offer it, other than they literally just don't want to. So small banks using the arbitrage, I guess you can always have faith in the American entrepreneur.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.